welcome back to another episode of the MTI KnowHow Coffee, another international episode today. I have my dear colleague Hugo McIntosh here for the very first time with me today. Hello, Hugo.
Hi, Verena. My pleasure to be here. I'm very happy to be able to share in this space. I am, as you mentioned, I am born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and have developed professionally my life in the corporate world, mainly in sales roles, but also some activity on procurement. So I've been very related to and tied up on the practical side and experiential side on business. And it is my pleasure to be here today. As I mentioned, due to this, I am an individual passionate about negotiation, which is what I would love to be able to discuss a little bit in this few minutes we'll be together sharing our coffee.
Yes, and that's exactly why you're here today. You said it already. One of your passion topics is negotiation. And I feel a bit curious because you hear, we get people requesting leadership trainings and sales trainings and customer service trainings, communication trainings. And sometimes, in the sales and service training, negotiation is a little part of that. But you never hear like, oh, I want a negotiation training. So for me, it seems like companies don't really spend that much resources on negotiation.
Well, to my surprise, in many cases, I would agree with your observation. Absolutely. I like to say that in life, and of course, as in business, we usually don't get what we deserve. We get what we negotiate. So if we take that to heart and to be true, negotiation becomes a key competency to develop both for life as well as for business. And strangely to me, I don't see it as much as far as development in a competency as I would like to see it in different organizations' world. So this is why or one of the reasons negotiation is a passion in life for me.
And you would think that companies spend a lot more resources on it then, because I can imagine that negotiating contracts or whatever, I mean, that's a big part of every company, not just in purchasing, but also in sales. I mean,
oh, of course, it comes up in purchasing, in sales, in human resources, when you have to negotiate with unions, on legal, with mediations. There's so many aspects of business as well as in life, I mean, if you ask me, my negotiations at home, I could tell you very interesting stories, as I'm sure for most people. But that said, yes, that's why it's become one of my focuses and passions to develop, And one of the things that I've observed in that sense is that in life and in business, people usually tend, without knowing or inadvertently, to settle for what I call suboptimal outcomes.
what does that mean? What's a suboptimal outcome?
It's an interesting concept, and if you allow me, let me explain it with a small metaphoric example or a story that was brought up by a very interesting lady, American lady, Mary Parker Follett. She lived around 1868 until 1933. She's known as the mother of management in Americas.
Oh, wow.
And oh yes, very, very interesting lady to read about. And she came up with this orange example about two sisters, Emma and Sarah, who were fighting about an orange, right? So they're fighting about this orange, and in comes mom to mediate and settle this negotiation in the middle. And what would be, in your opinion, like the normal, the best solution for that?
Split it in half. Everybody gets half an orange.
And we're all happy, right? And that is extreme. Yeah, and that's what usually normally everybody would do, and what I would do in general conditions. And we would be satisfied, happy. Mom, can continue doing her stuff and her chores and her work, and the kids are not fighting anymore. So we're all good and happy. Now, what would you tell me about that solution if I discuss a little more with both sisters and I find out that Emma wants the orange to make orange juice because she's thirsty, and Sarah wants the orange to use the peel to bake an orange cake because she has a sweet tooth and she loves orange cake?
Well, then I would say the solution probably isn't very satisfactory for both, because half an orange doesn't give you that much juice.
Exactly. And to that point, if I would find that out as an information, the interests underlying the reason why these two sisters want an orange, I would maybe arrive to a solution where I give Emma all the peel and I give Sarah all the pulp, and they both have 100% of each from that orange. That, in a very simple, maybe linear or basic, but metaphoric example, is what we mean by suboptimal results.
Okay, so
Because if I split,
the split would be the suboptimal result. So
exactly,
and you
it
say
is
that
satisfactory.
yeah, and you say that happens a lot in negotiation, also in companies. And why? I mean, why is that? You just mentioned talking to the two girls. So I gather, you know, you need to get more information. What are common mistakes, or are there any more mistakes people make so that they
Well,
settle for
there's
the suboptimal results?
yes, thank you. And there's quite a few of them. I'd like to mention four high-level ones so that people can start becoming aware and then seeing how to address that in order to expand their competencies. With what objective? Really, to negotiate more effectively, to optimize the results. If I use that same example of a cake, how could I, instead of splitting whatever size of a cake I have, expand that cake and get whatever portion I can bargain and negotiate from a larger cake? And it is not usually a mindset and a mind frame that people approach to with negotiation. And four typical mistakes I like to address with this are related to this suboptimal example of the orange, where it does happen in real life. And remember that when I say that people do or obtain suboptimal results, leaving value on the table, when I mean leaving value on the table, it is not that somebody got what I lost. It is not a sum zero. It is value that nobody captures. If I split the orange in half,
Everybody got something.
you only got half an orange juice and half the peel, and the rest goes to trash. Nobody captures that value. So, you know, there's research that shows that 80% of executives leave on average 25% of value on the table.
That's quite a lot.
It is quite a lot, and it does not mean that they are not competent in bargaining. It means that there is value that is not seen, identified, and then captured by the parties. It means that the cake remains this size when it could be this size. That is what we talk. So the first one is, as I mentioned, the first mistake, leaving value on the table when value could have been identified and captured. A second one is that many times, due to this or for different reasons, people end up settling for too little or settling for less than what they could obtain in negotiation, related to this first point. Why? Probably because they've not prepared adequately, they have not discussed and exchanged information in an appropriate manner, they have not understood and seen the context in a sufficiently expanded way, and they're focused only on their final outcome, or any of those reasons. The third one, and this is interesting, this is an interesting one, it might resound with you, that people walk away from the table of negotiation when negotiating would have been better.
Why would you do that? I mean,
For example, maybe because you do not have the emotional base and settling for negotiating there, or maybe because you have not analyzed what the options are adequately and you leave the table for another option when that option really did not exist, for example. And in a similar vein comes in the fourth typical mistake, and is when people settle for something that is worse than their alternative.
but that, now I really don't understand that. I mean, leaving for an alternative without negotiating, I can understand that, it can happen, but why would you settle for something less than an alternative?
Well, interesting question. It would sound quite obvious that you wouldn't do that, right?
No.
Nonetheless, when you observe how people negotiate, not everybody has worked through what their alternatives and options are, defining a reservation point adequately for different aspects of what is comprehended in a negotiation, and they already know, due to how our brains work with cognitive biases, they say something of the sort of like, well, I'm already dancing here, so let's dance. So I'm already embarked here, I've sunk costs in this, I've put effort in, I've already dedicated, and I don't even get to thinking what my real alternatives and options could be, or I don't work through developing or improving my alternatives to have adequate leverage in that negotiation. So I'm already there, I just need to close. When I focus on the outcome and not on the process, I will just want to close. And that could lead me to settling for an outcome that is worse than what my alternatives could be. This, when we train people, this comes up so obvious in some of the cases we use. It is fantastic. It is amazing.
So how can you solve these 4 problems? How can you stop leaving value on the table? What's necessary?
Well, of course, within the context of a deep or an extended training, we would focus on 2 aspects. If 70% of the success in negotiation is based on preparation, we will have to learn how to adequately prepare and, if possible, use a tool that could help us prepare adequately. We use a negotiation canvas that helps us support all the preparation in an adequate manner, going through the appropriate steps to make sure that you don't leave anything out that you could, for different reasons, have left out in a negotiation. You know, I like to use an example, a personal example on this. I have a son, one of them, who is an airplane pilot, and he's been flying jet planes in a private jet plane company for 16 years now. So he's quite experienced, and every time he gets on the pilot's cabin, he takes his pad out and he goes through what he calls a checklist. Now he knows what he has to go through. Why do they do that? Because, you know, the pilot could be having a bad day. Maybe my grandson didn't let him sleep very well, and he wants to make sure, due to the depth of what's at stake, that he doesn't leave anything out and doesn't forget. And the negotiation canvas for even an experienced professional works in the same way. It allows you to methodically prepare, taking into account all the different aspects of a negotiation so you don't leave anything out.
Can we have a look? Because I don't really know what a negotiation canvas, I can't really picture it at the moment. Could you show me?
Okay, let me show you one. Let me connect into the negotiation suite so I can show you what we mean by that. And as I do, let me mention the second aspect that we need to focus on, and that is the process. And when I speak about focusing in the process, it is following certain steps that will secure that I go through everything together with the canvas in such a way that I can achieve the expanded or optimized result I am looking for. You know, speaking about authors, I already mentioned Mary Parker Follett. Let me mention a Harvard professor who is very well known in the world of negotiation, Roger Fisher, and he co-authored a book called Getting to Yes, almost 40 years ago. Great read if you are interested in those kinds of informations, by the way. And he used to mention that effective negotiators focus on the process and not on the outcomes. So the question is, yes.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
So the great question is, again, to sum up, to see how can I prepare adequately and how I can work through a process that will allow me to keep and take track of each step on a focused manner, so I avoid getting positional and, even though could be satisfactory, losing value that nobody would capture.
So is there like a successful process, something that you recommend, or can these processes be different from company to company?
We like to work, if you can see here, on a 7-step process that includes preparation, strategic positioning, trust building, information exchange, review and building of the value offer, the tactical negotiation itself, and finally an implementable agreement, which is key. And on each of these ones, as you can see in the negotiation suite, we can get into writing and designing and devising specific activities when you get on your specific negotiations on particular companies or even personal real-life negotiations. And I would go building each step so I can make sure I follow consequently and consistently a step for each one of these. And then I also,
That makes it very easy, I said.
It is extremely easy and natural. And then when I get to the canvas, I do the same. I have my canvas here, for example, with my interests, so I can write my interests if I'm one of the sisters. With the example I gave you of the orange, I built one of the orange example here. which again, very linear, but so you can understand how it works when you get to complex negotiations in real life and business. She wants to quench her thirst, drink something tangy, fresh and healthy, and she wants the orange right now. I can contrast that with the interests I would assume initially before speaking that the other party has, and then when I exchange information and the information exchange step of the process, I either validate or adapt. So she wants to satisfy her sweet tooth, having the experience of baking a cake of a taste she loves, and she wants to have it right now. And when you start seeing that, it's sort of the solution starts to appear naturally.
Yeah.
So I would also, think of the alternatives, see here, and from that I would bring in bargaining chips. There are things I want to exchange. So you see, when I complete the canvas, and this of course takes some time, it takes training, it takes working on it, but I would have this canvas with all the concepts in each of them, and making sure that each sales professional in my organization would work with the same logic, the same consistency, and the same manner. And if I'm supervised, let's suppose that I'm your supervisor, Verena.
Yeah.
And you're taking and you're having this high-stake negotiation here. So you prepare with the canvas, and I get together with you, and we go over the canvas. In a very short amount of time, I can realize how well have you prepared or not, and I can also give you my point of view and my additions so that you can deepen your preparation with different perspective. And I can even do that working with teams. So it is a very intuitive and extreme manner. And even, something on the side note, when we can get this as a culture in an organization, the platform will start learning from the activities of that organization in the different canvases, and then it will bring you suggestions when you have to bring in new canvases. So it really is an intuitive tool that supports very, very well the process and development of negotiations, extremely well. And we'll do the same with the process. See?
Yeah. So the canvas is basically, is that step one of the process that helps you to prepare?
That will be step one of the process, and we'll kick off that preparation, but I will still be using the canvas. If you see in mind here the different aspects, when I go to the process and talk on strategic positioning, what do I talk about that? Of how well positioned I am in the negotiation. By the way, let me ask you a question here, because we're talking strategy in a negotiation. Yeah. Let me ask you, who has more power in a negotiation?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Who has more power? I would say either the bigger company, or the bigger, the stronger person, or the party with the most information.
Okay, interestingly, yeah, very good. And this is a typical answer I get when we do the trainings, usually, for example, from the sales professionals. When I go to procurement, I usually get the one with the larger pocket or the larger company, these kinds of things, and all valid views. But let me tell you that in our opinion and in our proposal, this is not the adequate or appropriate approach to answer that question.
So who has the bigger power? Who has more power in negotiation?
The party who has more power in a negotiation is the party who is least dependent on that negotiation to meet its interests.
Yeah. If you
said in another way, the party who has better options. That's why when I'm showing you here that we should check our alternatives and what the consequences of our alternatives are, it will drive us to think as well when we prepare, how can I improve my alternatives? Or how could, on the other hand, of course, in a legal and ethical manner, see that I can, quote unquote, worsen the alternatives of the other party. For example, bringing in a product that is very exclusive and nobody else has, so they wouldn't have the ability or possibility of going to my competitors in such an easy manner, or different aspects that we discussed during the trainings. But this, that became something like almost obvious, if I don't sell to this, I could sell to Joe, has a much wider and deeper impact in the negotiation. So when we train in that and we learn to work with that in a deeper manner, and we understand what those consequences and impact of those aspects are, it really takes us to a next level in our competencies and capabilities to negotiate.
Yeah. So this can help me as an individual, and I can prepare with this, I can follow the process, I can sense out my alternatives so that I'll be in the stronger negotiation position. You said it before as well that it gets even more powerful if you use it, if you implement it company-wide. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned at the beginning, and this is a great question, Verena, because if you look at organizations, much of most of what has to do with the business we do has to do with negotiation. Now, if I could even pick, for example, Michael Porter's five forces driving through business, two of them are absolutely related to negotiation. And that said, if you observe, you have normally sales organizations, you have procurement organizations, you have finance organizations, you have commercial, you have logistics, you have so many areas in the organizations. And you see a chief commercial officer, a chief financial officer, a chief procurement officer. I've never heard of a chief negotiation officer.
No, me neither. That's true. I've never heard that.
Right. And I'm not advocating that should be what should happen in an organization, have a negotiation organizational department. But what I'm advocating for is that a company can institute negotiation as an organizational competency. An organizational capability where you unify negotiation in the way, instead of having people negotiate ad hoc according to their experience and their best practices, and even taking all that experience when they leave the organization, getting all that captured as corporate knowledge within the organization, and not only having people prepare in the same way, supervise in the same way, making sure that they follow a process in a consistent and coherent manner for that organization, but also that all the knowledge that is subjacent in the individuals in the organization is captured and stays at the organization as an asset of the organization itself. So it is sort of getting a company competency of negotiation, moving it from individual capability to organizational capability. So double benefit. I work with individuals to increase the competencies, but also with the organization to make sure that becomes an institutional or organizational competency that can be a differential versus the company's competitors.
True, because if you would not do that, you would also be leaving value on the table.
As an organization, I would have to have
organization. I mean,
I had never thought of that. I had never thought of that part, but you bring it up, and true to fact. You would be leaving value on the table regarding your objectives and what you want to get. Interestingly enough, yes.
That's great. Thank you very much, Hugo. We're always also at the end already. And if you want to stop leaving your value on the table, if you want to get to know more about this negotiation canvas or the platform that can help you with your processes and to strengthen your negotiation standing, contact us here in the YouTube box. You will see our contact information, marketing@mwteam.com, and we'll bring you in contact with Hugo McIntosh. And then we can see where you lose value. Thank you very much, Hugo. Great that you took the time to speak to me here today and to show us all these interesting things. I thought it's quite cool. I never thought about it like that.
Thank you very much, Verena. My pleasure. I think you understand a little more why I'm so passionate about negotiation. And of course, as you mentioned, we are here and we'll be more than happy to interact and help and support anybody who would be interested in continue their development processes on negotiation topics. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see each other next week again for another episode of the MTI KnowHow Coffee. Bye.